people think I don't drink anymore because I'm trying to be all holy. The fact is I don't drink anymore because I can't, because I discovered I had alcoholic and addictive tendencies. And I used to drink so much that I had to check myself into rehab.
This is a journey.
Let me take you on a journey.
There will still be
The journey. The journey.
New sheriff in town, and his name is
The journey.
Journey.
This thing is bigger than Nino Brown. This is
The journey. The journey.
What is it that moved you?
The journey. The journey. The journey. The journey.
Welcome back to another episode of The Journey. I'm your host, Larry Robinson, and today we have a Memphis icon that we just gonna call Slash. Slash because he's a professor, he's an author, he's a pastor, there's so many roles. He's an activist. I mean, the brother's bad, but before we get to him, we got a quote. We got a quote from the great multimillionaire Madam C.J. Walker. And it goes a little something like this. I got my start by giving myself a start. And that describes Brother Earle Fisher. Now let me get it right. Let me put some respect on his name. It's Reverend Dr. Pastor Earle Fisher, author. Slash. We're just gonna call him Slash because he's got too many names. But listen, the brother straight out of Benton Harbor, Michigan, came to Memphis with a hoop and a dream. Basketball player on scholarship at Lemoyne Owen, but then decided to stay. And since then, he's a father, husband, and like I said, man, a lot of things in this community. So without further ado, Reverend Dr. Earle Fisher. What's up, Earle?
Man, it's good to be with you. Thank you for this opportunity, brother.
It's my honor.
No,
it's truly my honor because you've done so much in this community and have been at the point of the spear on many activists and initiatives around protecting Black people. Mm-hmm. So before we go there, we're gonna go back. Tell me about the house in Benton Harbor.
Man, look, I am Claudia's son. I'm Tierney's little brother, even though I'm taller than her and way more than her. She's 2 years older than me.
Okay.
I'm Denise's husband. I'm Jalen's pops. I'm the pastor of the Abyssinian Baptist Church, the blackest church in Memphis. Okay. And man, Benton Harbor is a very unique city. It's 90 miles east of Chicago. Right. And so usually when people say something about Michigan, they automatically assume Detroit, which is on the southeast side. Benton Harbor's on the southwest side. I say Michigan is Benton Harbor, Detroit, Saginaw, Flint, and Mississippi. Okay. So folks don't understand that, and I bring that up because they think the racial dynamics in the North are so much different than the racial dynamics in the South. Malcolm X said everything south of Canada is deep South. Right. And so, growing up in an environment like that, you get the vibes of the Midwest because Chicago is such an influential city from a cultural standpoint. And so that would be the place that people in Benton Harbor would go to. But
growing up, who were some of the people that were a heavy influence on you, even though outside a household? Yeah, well, that's part of what I'm getting at is the way that the culture of Chicago or that Midwestern culture, which you got to connect to the South and people who moved up during what they call the Great Migration, would be the influential people in the community who sought those cultural mores and were able to put them in a code that young people could relate to. And for me, it was sports, like most folks. Biggie said, either you slanging crack rock or you got a wicked jump shot. Absolutely. And so for most of the people in Benton Harbor, basketball was the thing that gave you an outlet to express yourself, but also gave you some, values. So early on, coaches and stuff like that, especially. Give me one. Lou Harvey, man. Lou Harvey was my freshman coach. He was the coach of the girls' varsity team. So he really coached my sister, especially her. My sister started as the point guard on the girls' team from her sophomore year all the way up to her senior year. Oh, wow. And so Coach Harvey was very influential. He was the one who ran the gym. Right. You know what I'm saying? And so between him and the varsity coach named Paul Wilhite for the guys, they were the people who people wanted to impress and people wanted to get their affirmation from. But you also have people in the community, especially neighborhood icons, you know what I'm saying? Right. And so in the area where I grew up, the neighborhood that I grew up, there was some of the OGs who, kind of took a liking, to me. Okay, so I'm gonna get back. We're gonna get back to expanding on the story, but this is the rapid fire section. Sure. So, what decision you make as a young person that ended up having a lifelong impact even though you didn't know it at the time?
Well, I was still young when I decided to make the move to Memphis. And of course, I say Benton Harbor raised me, but Memphis made me. So that'd be one of those decisions.
Okay. How different are you from the person you thought you'd be as a young person?
Jay-Z said, man, you was who you was before you got here. So in some ways, I'm the same person. But in other ways, I've evolved, I've matured, I've grown, especially ideologically and philosophically. But insofar as like the values that I have held, I got from my mother,
who did you dream? So like when you go back to Benton Harbor, who did you dream you was gonna be?
This is finna trip you out.
Okay.
People called me Lil Penny.
Really?
When I was in Benton Harbor. They said I looked just like him. You know what I'm saying? We had similar swags and all of that. And so he was somebody I looked up to. I never knew that I would be in the same city as him, long term. And I had a chance to meet him. I've been in Memphis almost 25 years now. And I met Penny for the first time last year.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was that like?
I mean, it was cool, you know what I'm saying? Especially because I've been able to, you describe some of the things I've been involved in. And so I ain't never really been like a groupie type, you know what I'm saying? I'm not really awestruck, and I wasn't then. I felt like he actually knew who I was because of some of the stuff that I've done. And so, me, some of his coaches, folks that I'm cool with or have encountered over the years, it was dope, man. I look forward to, chopping it up with him at some point in the future.
When'd you know you was gonna be okay? When'd you know you like, oh man, this thing life, I can do this?
I'm not sure I know now.
Okay.
I think I'm still trying to figure it out like the rest of us, right? But there are some things, some decisions that have been made along the way from the school standpoint, ministry standpoint, some of which I felt like, I was coerced into. I still feel like God pulled the rug out from under me. This ain't what I had in mind. We'll talk about that along the way. But, by the time you've graduated, from an HBCU,
right?
You know what I'm saying? That stamps you, especially with some street credibility from the basketball court to the neighborhood, and so you get an opportunity or two. Some of my early opportunities in the school system, I was a instructional computer technician, Airways Middle School, not long out of college. But then by the time I got to seminary, and I think I started to see my path forward, so I would have to get some kudos too.
I want to know, what was it like when you got the calling? But not right now. We're going to get that in the second half. Yeah. What's your why? Why you get up every day and do what you do?
Number one, because people loved me enough to do it for me.
Okay.
Family, friends, community members, elders, ancestors. And because I feel called and compelled to, pay it forward.
Okay, all right. This is the last question of this segment, and I just gotta know, man. I just gotta know, being from Benton Harbor, Michigan, and the whole nine, when did you know that you were a black man? Hold on real quick.
Sure.
Listen, we're gonna come right back on the journey. My brother Earle Fisher gonna share with us when he realized he was a brother. Stay right there. This is a journey on the Kazuki Network.
This is a journey.
Let me take you on a journey.
Success in life is not a straight line. There are twists and turns in everyone's life, and the more you know about their story, the more you'll understand the process. Kazuki Media Group proudly presents The Journey, a show that features successful black men in Memphis telling their stories of their lives and the ups and downs they've encountered on their ultimate road to success. We believe The Journey will encourage young men and help them see that life is a journey. Watch The Journey, hosted by me, Larry Robinson. Brought to you by the Kazuki Media Group in partnership with the Delta Boulé. Welcome back to The Journey. I'm your host, Larry Robinson, and today we have Reverend Dr. Put some respect on his name, Earle Fisher. So listen, before we left, we asked you about being black, but before we go there, what's your superpower? What's that thing that you feel like you do better than anybody else?
Man, that's a challenge, man, because I don't know, black folks, especially, black men, are dehumanized such that the idea of superpower might be
Man, you a hero. You a hero. So I gotta know, because I'm gonna follow that up with tell me your theme music. If you walking in the door, you know, every superhero. Every superhero.
I guess that's what Kanye said. I
theme.
guess every superhero needs his theme music. Denise would say my theme music is Rock Boys by Jay-Z. With Kenneth Whalum is on.
That's at American Gangster?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're right. So there's that. Now, again, I'm still struggling with the superpower thing, but one of the things I feel like has been a theme and a staple in my life is integrity.
Okay.
You know, like I am who I say I am. I'm a man of my word. You know, I don't gotta sugarcoat nothing. I don't gotta fake in front. You know, imperfect as I am, flawed as I am. You know, I think I've grown to a place where I am comfortable in my own skin.
So the household was you, your sister?
Me, my mother, and my sister.
All right, now Dad, where's Dad?
Yeah, so my father and I were estranged for a long time.
Really?
You know, since I was about 2 years old, actually.
Oh, wow.
You know, and I found out more about the developments later in life. And I reached out to him when my son was born because I wanted to reconcile that relationship.
Now, was he in Benton Harbor still?
So he was in the Benton Harbor area. So he was, you know, Covert, Jackson, but he was also in and out of prison and things of that nature. Grand Rapids.
Gotcha.
So some of those areas in Southwest Michigan he traversed, but you know, he and I really didn't have a lot of contact and correspondence when I was coming up. And so again, it was, you know, primarily, so I had a stepfather who was around, you know, the first 11, 12 years, I think, of my life. My mother and my mother divorced during my teenage years. So, you know, you find some of those male role models, you know, where you can. I mentioned in the first segment, coaches and things of that nature. Or some of the homies on the block that was the OGs, a couple of years older, whether they were, you know, involved in, you know, street organizations or, you know, whether they were street pharmacists or whether they were just good, wholesome, you know, OGs who wanted to make sure that the young niggas, you know, would be okay. And so, you know, I got scores of them. And then, you know, by the time I get to Memphis, well, I know we sticking with
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, by the time I get to Memphis, coaches again, because now, you know, I'm at the HBCU, legendary Jerry Johnson.
Right.
His first assistant.
Now,
coach.
how did they get you out of?
So I was in a junior college conference.
Okay, you was in
and the guy there was a scout there that would recruit people in that conference and send us to HBCUs in the South. Okay. And so there was a pipeline of sorts, dude named Walter Jackson. And so he came to one of my games and asked me if anybody was looking at me. And I was a academic risk at the time. Okay. So a lot of the schools up north were trying to do like partial scholarships or something like that. He sent word to Coach Johnson. Coach Johnson called my house, left a message on the voicemail. Wow. Sight unseen. Yeah. Hey, this guy told me about you. Come on, I got a full ride scholarship for you. Oh, and so that's kind of like how that happened. But Coach Johnson's first assistant when I got there was Curtis Hollowell. Okay. And he was the first coach that I felt like really related to folks who grew up in the hood or in the streets or in the black community. Right. And also had affinity for sports and athletics and what that could help translate insofar as life values and things of that nature. So he was very influential for me when I first got to Memphis. Okay. And so by the time I accept calls to ministry, I know you want to talk something about that.
Hold on. No, I got to go back to, when did you realize you was a black man? What was that moment?
So my uncle, now, let me bag up. My uncle John Fisher, my mother's brother, right?
Now you smiling when you
my dude.
Wait a minute now. You mentioned Uncle Johnny, and you lit up like a Christmas tree.
Because I should have started out talking about Uncle Johnny. That's the OG in the family.
Shout out to Uncle Johnny.
Yeah, Uncle Johnny. He's the one, you know what I'm saying, who would tell me what it means to be a fisherman. And part of why I'm bringing him up now is because he loves to tell this story. Because you asked when I knew I was a black man. They would say around second grade. Now, again, Benton Harbor, Michigan, right? Up north. The teacher said she was going to paddle all of the black students in the class.
Whoa.
And I protested. And walked out the room. And they had to call my uncle to the school, and he found me on the playground. That's how they tell the story. Wow. And so I knew something then, right? I mean, this stuff gets more pronounced as you grow older and see more and more of the social and political realities of inequity. And so Benton Harbor is 90% black, highly impoverished.
Right.
Twin City, bridge separates Benton Harbor from St. Joseph, Michigan, which is 90% white and relatively affluent.
Right.
So anytime you drove over that bridge, and my mother worked on that bridge for decades, right? Either the Bicentennial Bridge or the Blossom Land Bridge. So my mother had worked for the Memphis Department of Transportation.
Michigan.
Yeah, Michigan Department of Transportation for decades. She still works for them now, just not on those bridges, right? And so anytime you would travel there, you would be able to see the difference. If you ever go from Benton Harbor to St. Joe, the first thing you see when you cross over the Bicentennial Bridge is the Barron County Courthouse.
Wow.
Like that's
they
your
trying to show y'all.
That's your weapon.
This is where you going.
You niggas act up if you want to.
Yeah, you come over if you want to.
We got a special place for you. Right.
Yeah,
right. So the older you get and the more you learn about the social and political realities, the more pronounced that stuff becomes. But they would say, you know, I knew at a real early age that there was some distinction.
Okay. So the calling. What happened for you to say, it's my time to be a minister?
Man, I don't have that clear cut like epiphany, right? Like I was like, oh, well now, right? The closest thing to it is this. I'm at Mississippi Boulevard, right? This is my senior year at Lemoyne. I know that my plans for basketball aren't panning out exactly like I thought. But Frank Anthony Thomas is preaching. He has on a black polo shirt with the Mississippi Boulevard logo right here, black slacks, black shoes. And as he is preaching, I hear something say, that's gonna be you. And I'm looking around, and folks, I used to be in the balcony. That was my spot when I first got there. So you can ask your wife, you ask some of the other folks from the boulevard, and they'll tell you, like, man, I broke down. Like, it was something that broke in that moment. So between that moment and New Year's Eve into New Year's Day, 2002 into 2003. Every year for New Year's, I would go to watch night service. At, Faith Evangelistic Church of God in Christ is the church that we were at the time. And after I leave there, I go kick it with my homies, we drink and turn up. This New Year's Day, I just couldn't feel the vibe. So I went to watch night. I walk into the room where my homies are drinking and popping bottles, and they would say this all the time, they're gonna preach at a clique.
Really?
Yeah, and so I just kind of took it tongue in cheek, but I just really couldn't like had a couple drinks, just really wasn't feeling it, man. Went to the crib, had a conversation with my mother, and the next thing I remember, I was just in tears, and I remember her saying something like, you said you was gonna be a preacher. I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't even know. So I would learn in hindsight something that she said I said at age 7 or 8 or something like that in a conversation with my grandmother. So, all of those things kind of like pieced together. I don't have this, now I know I'm doing it and doing it type deal. That day at Mississippi Boulevard, I think it was either that day or one of the days that followed, I went and had a conversation with Pastor Frank. And so he kind of guided me into seminary and all of that and had helped me shape what we are, acknowledging as my calling.
Do you feel like that was the calling?
Yeah, but I feel like the call is never, is never isolated to one segment or one station.
Okay.
So the things that I'm doing now in terms of activism and scholarship, like all of that is connected to my call. But that's not what I was thinking about, when I was responding to those unctions on those particular days. It was just like something I had to go prepare for whatever that was going to be. And it continues to evolve.
Tell me about the worst day of your life.
Man, that's a tough one. If you're Black in America, you got a litany of them.
Give me one that just comes to mind.
So I have started drinking so much. I shared this with my congregation this past Sunday. Well, I've shared it with my congregation several times, but this particular sermon series that I'm in is These Are My Confessions. I'm talking about inspirational reflections as a religious revolutionary. And I share with them, people think I don't drink anymore because I'm trying to be all holy. The fact is I don't drink anymore because I can't, because I discovered I had alcoholic and addictive tendencies. And I used to drink so much that I had to check myself in rehab.
Whoa.
And I was experiencing what they call delirium tremens, which are severe withdrawals. 1 out of every 4 people don't survive them. And so that was my inadequate and immature way of dealing with stress. I remember being in the hospital. Denise is there, my mother's there, and I was telling my mother, she was rubbing my head. I was like, man, I messed up everything. And so that was one of the worst moments of my life, just feeling like all that I had fought through to get to where I was, all of the adversity that I had overcome from, the circumstances in Benton Harbor to, highs and lows early on in Memphis and then into ministry and all of that. And now here I am, battling what ultimately is like this addiction. And I felt like I had jacked everything up. So that was one of the worst moments of my life.
It's crazy because what came to mind in that moment for me was when Denzel Washington was talking to Will Smith after he slapped Chris Rock and said, at your highest moment, Satan comes for you. And that to me is what that sound like, is you were on a trajectory. And I remember, during that time you were going, and pretty amazing. So, teen years, tell me about the moment when you was playing ball that you said, okay, I can do this.
So the irony of that is, like, I was a late bloomer. Like, I was cut from the varsity team my senior year. So, played my freshman year. Yeah,
you was
bro.
Cut?
Oh yes. I got that story. Like, it's a it's a legendary tale.
Now, that would be the worst day of my life, being a hooper.
I thought about that. That don't rank with the situation with the addiction, though. Like,
okay.
Was I disappointed? Yeah. Did I feel like I was shortchanged? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Because everybody kind of knew what time it was. But you said something, you quoted Madam C.J. Walker earlier. And so I didn't come from a well-connected athletic family. My sister was paving the way because she was making a name for herself. But, that don't grant no young black boy no opportunity because they older sister is cold, right? Right. Like,
it don't translate.
Like that, like, you could be an older brother and your younger sister get love because their older brother is cold.
Absolutely.
That don't work in the inverse, right? So I didn't come from that, and so I didn't have a lot of those connects. So I was cut. You know what I'm saying? And I had to overcome that.
Right.
So that was one of those things in terms of adversity, but at the same time, the decision that I made to concentrate on basketball really happened in a conversation I had with a guy my junior year.
Okay.
So I was like the lead drummer in the band, right? Like, I was recognized as one of the best drummers in Southwest Michigan at the time.
So you was a musician.
Yeah. I still can play a little bit, but So a guy came to me one summer and said, man, you need to put them drumsticks down and work on your game.
Oh.
I was like, oh, okay, And so I started to take the craft of basketball a lot more seriously in the middle of my teenage years because I felt like my opportunity to get out of the circumstances and situations or limitations of my hometown were increased if I ended up with an athletic scholarship, because those were the things that I seen from some of my peers, classmates and OGs, folks who were like seniors when I was a freshman. One of them is actually the mayor of Benton Harbor now, Marcus Muhammad. He graduated in 1993, went to DePaul.
Okay.
Converted under Farrakhan.
Right.
And then now he's back and been represented as the mayor of my hometown. Another guy who played on that team, who's really an OG to me, his name's Prentice Magruder. Prentice Magruder went to a junior college, then ended up playing at Cal, right behind Jason Kidd. Okay. So after Jason Kidd went to the league, Sharif Abdul-Rahim, when he was a freshman, his point guard was Prentice Magruder. That's my OG. You had Corey Childs, who went to Tulane, who played with Gerald Honeycutt and all of them. Right. So that was class of 93. I'm class of 96. They were seniors when I was freshman. Okay. And so they were like my OGs. My classmate, my guy Kerry Hartfield, Sean Hartfield, he played at DePaul with Quentin Richardson and Lance and Bobby Simmons and all of them. Okay. He was in that class. I got a bunch of folks around.
So really a village type thing, man. You got some boys that really looked out for you and helped
and challenged
you
too. Like so when you don't make the team, they're like, well, what you gonna do?
So it's like those 5 people that you hang with really determine who you are.
Yeah, right. But, my circle was full of, some diverse folks. I had some of the folks who were into athletics, some who were kind of like eclectic and intellectual, some who were just street-oriented cats, and then me and one of my closest friends, Danny Jennings, Tay-Tay was what we call him. You know, we were probably the ones who waffled in between like the street, the hood, and the intellectual and all. He's
multilingual.
Yeah, very diverse, man. You know, our portfolio was diverse.
Well, let's bring it back to Memphis. You know, we coming to the end, but I want you a couple things. What has Memphis done for you?
It grew me up, bruh.
Really?
It really matured me. It matured me in some ways.
You smiling on Memphis.
Yeah, man, I love Memphis, brother. There ain't no question about it. And you know, I would put my Memphis resume up against anybody who grew up here and then left and went to Atlanta or Charlotte and ain't been back. Or only comes back to visit. Okay, I've been here 25 years.
Okay.
So, you know, I love Memphis, man. It really grew me up. It gave me some opportunities. It gave me some adversities that I had to overcome. You know, it has affirmed me in some ways. It has challenged me and chastised me in some ways. You know, I ain't got nothing but love for the city. That's why you see me, you know, going as hard for it as I go.
Greatest success. What's that greatest thing you would say? I did that.
I've been married to Denise for 14 years, bro.
It's been that long.
It's been 14 years. We got married in 2009.
Dang, it don't seem like 14 years.
I've been married to Denise. So between my relationship with Denise and my relationship with my son, Jalen, who, you know, that's been up and down, high and low, but, you know, he knows who I am and how I get down. And, you know, folks who know me know, you know. And so although that's not Denise's son, you know, Jalen's 22. You know, because we've had it. You remember Jalen?
Yeah,
you know?
I remember that, but Jalen been balling. Woo.
Yeah, I mean, well, look. And I respect and appreciate his game and what he was able to accomplish, you know, the big shot in high school. You know, folks don't know, but Imani Bates wouldn't have never won a high school championship if Jalen didn't knock down the game winner. But, you know, he got some of that honest, at least some of it. Some of it he got honest. So those are things, you know, outside of all of the academic, you know, authorship, all of that other stuff. I mean, if you ain't a good person to your family, if you ain't a good husband to your wife, if you married, if you can't be a good father to your child, you know, I think some of that other stuff diminishes in value. So my greatest achievement, I believe, is just being somebody that my family respects. My mother got, you know, my mother, my sister, my cousins, my, you know, aunts and uncles, you know, my wife, my son, they fond of me. So that's a big thing.
Going back to Benton Harbor.
I love the way you keep going back to Benton Harbor because folks can't understand, like, when people say, you know, you see my glory, but you don't know my story. Folks don't know Benton Harbor.
So you going back to Benton Harbor. You going to the house that you were raised in. You walk in. You see a little kid at the table. Little kid looks up. It's young Earle Fisher. What would you say to that kid?
Wow. You know, I feel like I should be able to say something real quick and witty and off the cuff, but I don't. I sit with that young brother for a while. I probably listen to him more than I try to say something. You know, eventually, I probably get to, it's gonna be all right, young brother. You know, God got you. You know, something along those lines. But that young brother deserves to be listened to. You know, that young brother deserves some space to communicate the authenticity of his experiences and perspectives. You know, and this is no slight on any individual or even institution. I think black boys don't really get that space, especially early on. Like I had to carve out that space along the way.
Well, better yet, and I want you to say it right there in that camera. Give them an Earle Fisherism. What would you say to those black boys?
What would I say to those black boys?
That they will remember this moment. They'll remember this time.
You are not relegated to or limited to the stereotypes that people try to pigeonhole you to. There's much more possibility, much more opportunity, much more grace, much more love, much more peace, much more promise, and much more power out there for you. So I would say explore that, and don't be afraid to accept something that's different than what everybody else has been trying to push on you.
Cool. I got my start by giving myself a start. That's what Madam C.J. Walker said. But this brother right here is basically embodied that whole statement, that whole quote. So once again, We're going to keep bringing them to you. I just need you to keep coming back because we dropping pearls and we're going to give you this roadmap on how to make it through this thing.
And you can give me my suit back after this is over.
All right, I will. Thank you for letting me wear it. Brother Earle, thank you, man. I appreciate you, man.
Yeah.
Love you too. Listen, this is The Journey on the Kazukian Network. I'm Larry Robinson. For our guest, Brother Dr. Reverend Dr. Pastor Earle Fisher. Listen, till the next time. Peace. Thank you to our partners, the Delta Boule. To hear more incredible stories like this, be sure to download the Kazukian app from the App Store or Google Play. Or check out the Journey Memphis podcast on all your major podcast providers. Also, check us out on the Kazukian Network.